Pokemon. Well, now Pokemon Unite. Basically, League of Legends meets Pokemon. I
That's
think it
not true.
looks. I think it's the I think it's one of the most natural evolutions in Pokemon, and it's probably the most unique thing we've seen come out of Pokemon since Pokemon Snap, maybe, or Pokemon Stadium. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's pretty unique for.
I don't think that's true. I don't know. I feel like there's been a ton of spin-off games that aren't popular, but they're still good, you know? Oh shit, I just realized. I apologize. I have not had the chat up. I feel like an idiot now. I knew I was missing something. I just couldn't figure out what it was. So I am sorry about that if anyone has chatted. Um really am sorry about that. And the app broke. Oh, I don't know why the app breaks like the first time I look at my profile a lot. Sorry if anybody chatted. I feel kind of dumb. I have it up now. Sorry. But I assume nobody's here because the stream just started. I don't really agree with that assessment of like saying there hasn't been anything ambitious. Ambitious. It almost feels like they're saying. I mean, you look at like Magikarp Chump or whatever it was called, like very silly games that are still like way different. Pokemon Quest was massively different. I think at least there's not really games. There are games like that out there, and they probably just copied some sort of script. But I still think they implemented it kind of nicely, where it's just a couple moves. And there's tons of other Pokemon games that I never even played. Um, so I don't know if I really like that assessment of saying, they just kind of slapped a Pokemon on League. I don't think the game is close in the slightest. I just don't think it really is.
Pokemon. Sadly, I don't think it's very unique overall for gaming. And this is one of those things where it seems so backwards. And maybe I'm wrong because I used to just not know about less famous games. But it feels like the bigger game companies and stuff are now starting to mimic the indie games.
Yep.
And I don't know. I still wish that I let me phrase this properly. I've always wanted to see a Pokemon game where it's more like a Pokemon War instead of like a one-on-one or a two-on-two Pokemon battle where it's like you take turns.
Yep.
I've always wanted to see a more interactive Pokemon game, and yeah, I know there's a Pokemon fighting game. Let's ignore that. But I love the concept of you're playing a Pokemon that actually moves, actually fights. There's actually a team, even though it's not like an army or a warfare scenario. It's a team fighting each other.
That's literally all this game is supposed to be. I don't think the scope of this is higher at all than just that. When you look at the games that he listed before, he said Pokemon Snap, which is literally being able to photograph Pokemon. Like revolutionary, put them in 3D spaces where you can interact with them. Revolutionary. Then you have the game is releasing sometime in July. Nobody is really sure when, but sometime this month. For Switch only, the mobile release will be sometime in September. That's what they've said, at least. They, as in Nintendo. So the whole Snap thing was like, wow, I can interact with the Pokemon. Stadium was crazy because you could see the 3D environment when you had these 2D games. There was a 3D, and it was kind of a similar fighting, except you have cameras moving all around and saying, wow, I can actually see them use a move other than a sprite shooting a water gun and hitting the other Pokemon. Or just simply the Pokemon going like this, hitting the other one. Nice, you have a Switch? Cool. I have one too. It's right there. I am ready. I'm ready for the game. Um, so Stadium was cool because it had nice music. It had different music. It still had the same mainline game, where it was maybe like a 3v3 or a 6v6 um, battle, and there was all the same moves. Sure, there were some moves that were different, and the game selected certain moves for certain battle cups, but overall, Like those are revolutionary games. Here's another revolutionary game where like if you look at Quest, which seems not really a precursor to this game at all. Like it's very different, but you have some more control over Pokemon, where you get to pick your lineup and use their moves whenever they want. Sure, you can't move the Pokemon yourself, but you get to use the move, and that's what's so exciting. Like if you wanted to use Dig or you wanted to use String Shot, you could. You were in active control at any point, and there were these small cooldowns that reset, and it felt cool, like playing as Starmie or playing as different Pokemon. Like you could just be Psyduck. There were also shinies in the game, which was cool, but I thought it was pretty revolutionary in the fact that you get to be the Pokemon in control. This game takes it another step forward, which I think is. I guess I should just full screen this. Which I think is like even farther, even crazier. And it just says, like you don't just get to use the move, you actually get to physically move the Pokemon. I'm not sure why this wasn't a thing on Quest because it would have been so good. Maybe it was hard to implement. Maybe they just didn't want to implement it. Who really knows? I know it would have made speedrunning, better. Not maybe not better because the RNG part is slightly interesting. Maybe it's not the greatest thing, um, but it at least makes it different each time you go. Almost, it feels different, which was nice. And when you have stuff that's like 30 seconds, if you perfect the movement, there is no going farther sometimes. So the RNG gives it some more depth or randomness. Um, but this game, I feel like, is a huge game, and it's like for this series and the brand overall, I feel like is huge because you get to move and use it. I know they brought up the fighting game. I never played it, so I can't really talk much about it. But people seem to like it because once again, you get to move the Pokemon, you get to be the Pokemon. But this, it feels like you have a 3D environment now. Sure, it's top down, but like they're 3D everything. Um, and you get to be the Pokemon. And I think it is a massive step forward. Because usually, like, the only 3D you get is being the trainer. Like, you get to be the trainer. But now you get to be the Pokemon. And I don't think that should be really underrepresented at all. I think it's a huge plus.
I think that's kind of cool. I'm
I
not the biggest fan of these styles of games. Even though I like StarCraft, I never got into League of Legends and stuff.
Yeah, and
What about you?
that's what League is
What is this
basically.
quality? Maybe if I keep it at 720, what is going on?
Dota as a mod of like the Warcraft 3, which is an RTS, so it's similar in look, but I've never really been big into League, I'll be honest. Even like Heroes of the Storm, Dota 2, whatever. Never been big on them. So I think just
Hmm.
it seems like Pokemon Unite it's going to be accessible. It doesn't look crazy complicated. Like it's on the Switch first and foremost. It's getting launched to mobile later, so you're appealing to a child crowd, so it's got to be simple for them. Um, but
Counterpoint. May I make a quick counterpoint?
of course, make it quick.
Halo Wars 1 may have been a bit of a flop in terms of complication for the fans, and it gave them a very hard balancing point of they wanted to bring in casuals, but they wanted, the hardcore StarCraft players to play.
Yep.
But Halo Wars 2, even though it didn't really up the game too much, I I I was a pretty big StarCraft player for a while, and I had a good time with Halo Wars 2. Um, may I argue that if they keep this just complicated enough, they might actually be able to entertain the actual crowd of kids and Dota players?
Well, the thing is though, like
So I think that, and this is definitely a personal opinion going on, but I think that the game it will never get complicated. It's not meant to be complicated. He's saying maybe if you make it a little bit more, you get some more of those people. But I think someone like myself that used to play Dota 2, is not looking for that game anymore. And I'm interested in this game. There's people from other games that are obviously more complex than this game that are interested in the simplicity of the game. It's something where you have to think about less, but you just have to be better at those less things. And like movement. Some people are just really good at movement. I'm pretty good, and obviously nowhere near the best, but I think I'm pretty good at movement, and that means in this game I'll be really good because movement is even more important. It's not like spam 7 spells and well, not gonna seven. That was maybe I shouldn't exaggerate that hard when it comes to numbers like that. But yeah, like 4 or 5 spells depending on who you pick. Plus, you got anywhere from like 2 to 6 items that you can toggle or actively use. Right? It's a very like button pressy game usually. Our MOBAs. Even if you're playing on mobile, it can definitely be button pressy where you have to time your thing, precisely. This has to happen exactly now. Um, Spamming on cooldown is still a thing, but that carries over to this game where you can spam on cooldown just by spamming the button. It feels different, right? Because they're Joy Cons or the Pro Controller versus normal stuff, but I really do think the simplicity is going to be where it gets the game. Halo Wars 1 definitely tanked because it was not like easy enough to just pick up and play. Like you can do it. The Halo people don't want a StarCraft game, as is kind of expected, because they're not the same genre. And Halo within itself is an FPS that does have like some strategy, but it's nowhere near a StarCraft level strategy. It's not meant to be. It's meant to be I am a better shot than you. I have a better reaction time than you. And while yes, like you could say reaction time, I guess, or mental cognitive ability, those are the same words, can carry over, you're still looking at a whole different set of functions the person has to do, right? Like building things, moving units. Those aren't things you do when you play Halo. Um, the difference between a game like Halo to Halo Wars and Pokemon to a Pokemon MOBA is that it's the same moves. Like you understand what a surf does. You understand that certain moves, decrease accuracy, decrease the attack, buff your attack. So you can carry over that knowledge. It's not like I'm building this vehicle. Like I used to play an FPS, now I'm building a vehicle. It's not like that. This is like, hey, I'm slow, bro. I'm gonna use a psychic move, or I'm gonna use whatever the water gun looking thing is. It's very simple. Hey, I'm Pikachu. I'm gonna use a web, which is kind of like the paralysis, Thunder Wave. Like the web is kind of like Thunder Wave, where you paralyze them. Or all of his other electric moves are like, hey, I'm gonna shoot lightning at them. It carries over very simply. It makes sense, right? Whereas the Halo stuff is just like a totally different game. And I really think that's going to carry over well. Where it's like, hey, if I want to play, Venusaur and I want to use Solar Beam, it seems pretty fun to use. I like the move. I'm just going to spam Venusaur and use Solar Beam all game. And I can do that. When you're playing this game, you can do things like that. And I think that's very important. Um, and I don't think people have really picked up on that. It's massive.
With any game or game console, it's the adults that have the money. They're going to be the ones buying it. And you're also introducing this new Pokemon game, which is more of a mature game, really, like League of Legends. That's more, I say mature, but I'm probably speaking out of term there. But, you know, it's the children that grew up with Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow are now adults around 26 to 30-ish. So they're going to be ones that see this and it's like, hey, it's finally a air quote breath of fresh air into Pokemon. I mean, it's something that's been around for maybe 10, 15 years, but it's something that's the MOBA style game is new to Pokemon. And that's like a big company thing. It's safer to stick with what they know, i.e., the typical Pokemon game where you get 8 badges and kill gym leaders, or uh, you
Right.
know. But it's I think this is I hope this turns out well. Uh, it's being made by Tencent, which is apparently notorious for, cosmetics and microtransactions.
The thing is that like this point he's about to bring up, and hopefully they talk about this in like a decent light. But when you have MOBAs, they normally run on being able to buy things that just don't affect the game at all in the slightest, right? Like the big thing is always just, I want a new player skin, I want a new hero skin, I want a new champion skin. And if you've looked at like the skins they have for the Pokemon, they're really funny, and you want to buy them because they look cool. The Snorlax one is easily the best, where he's got the floaty around his chest. That is easily just a really cool skin idea. It doesn't change much. Maybe it makes him a little bit too big, visually. But it doesn't seem to really affect the gameplay too much. And, assuming you don't have to, like, assuming you can't buy your way to items earlier, there would be no pay to win in this game. I guess you could say that, like, buying more Pokemon so that you can play more Pokemon is a pay to win, because then you could like have more options for your team comp. But realistically, most people are probably going to stick to a couple Pokemon that they like, um, and play those a lot because they want to play a Pokemon. Like a lot of people want to play Snorlax. A lot of people are Charizard fans, right? It's like one of the most iconic Pokemon is Charizard. So a lot of people just want to play Charmander. Which you get a couple free ones in the beginning. I don't know if it's that one or whatnot, but I don't think microtransactions are going to be a problem at all in this game because they're always just skin based. Like think about Dota. There's never been anything that's pay to win except for there was like a taunt or an item. Like there was the balloons that technically could have been pay to lose. There are things like that where like the game doesn't MOBA games are not pay to win games. Like it just inherently. What are they gonna do? Like buff your attacks 5% because you bought something? Nobody's ever gonna do that because that actually will destroy the game, and people will just stop playing. Um, One of the things they brought up was, um, let me get some water because I don't have any water on me. One sec. Thank you for the hydrate spam. Thank you. I got it. One of the things they brought up was adult timeline where the adults are now getting to this age. He said like 26 to 30 or something, and um that they're going to be the ones buying these things, which is true, but I don't think you should ever discount like the purchasing power of children. um like I didn't buy things when I was a kid, but maybe that's because that was a different culture. Like I didn't ask my parents to buy me skins, but that definitely is a thing these days. Obviously, you just look at Fortnite where you're just like, hey, mom, can I get this skin? And they're like, sure, son, here you go. And then you buy whatever Marvel character skin you want or whatever they got going out these days, right? But I think you should not discredit the funds that children have for use. I mean, just look at like phones these days, right? Like all these kids have phones, which are very expensive, and they buy apps on the phone. So they definitely have a lot of power. I thought that was just a weird thing to say that I heard.
So we'll see how bad that goes. I mean, I
Hmm.
hear the game's going to be free or fairly cheap to start. So
Oh,
if I got to pay for like
yeah,
a
it's gonna be.
I yeah, I mean it's like Fortnite, right? You pay for the battle pass and the skins are like $20 each, which is nuts. Even the skins are like pathetically plain there. But I mean if it costs like $20 to play get Pokemon Unite and you buy a skin, that's probably at the extent I'll put into it maybe. Like a Charizard skin or a Garchomp. That's probably be all I'll pay for, if anything.
Mm.
I
While
like
we're on
being
the
able to
topic of skins,
yeah.
sorry.
No, let's say I like actually being able to unlock skins by doing things in game, like doing hard challenges, stuff like that. Kind of like the Bumblebee armor from Halo 3 or Hayabusa from Halo 3.
Mm. Yeah, the fact that it's almost free guarantees it's going to be microtransaction heavy
Yep.
and maybe some for the battle pass. And they have a very free avenue of money by saying, "Okay, we're going to release these new Pokemon."
Yep.
um,
100%.
yeah, yeah. All right, I will say one thing, and I know the Dota players will get on me. Dota players, hello.
Yo,
Um,
what's up?
the graphics look like every other Dota game. They look like they were made
What?
15 years ago. They look like garbage. I will
What do
say
you?
this:
What?
StarCraft 2 looks better,
What?
and
I still understand. What does that even mean? I didn't get it. They look old? I thought they looked newish. Maybe that's what he's getting at. Am I just so in the past that I think these look good? Is he calling me old? Am I dumb? What? What is I'm lost a little bit. He said I would get on him that the graphics weren't good, but I thought the graphics looked great. I mean, maybe it's me because, I play N64 games. And sure, they were made, a long time ago. So any graphics to me look great, which might be what he's getting at. But I think there's a lot of like Dota 2 stuff that's updated. I mean, the game becomes more graphically intense like every few months or so. Where like there are colors spewing everywhere. There are abilities that are just changing the whole screen. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'll figure it out eventually. But I thought the graphics were really nice because, the Pokemon are very crisp and clear, and all the moves look like their hitboxes and everything look nice. They're correctly proportioned. Um, so maybe I just didn't really understand the joke. I don't know.
that game is going on 10 years old. I get that this game wants to look cartoony, and I my nostalgia is going off the charts seeing, Charizard pummel a bunch of Gen 3 Pokemon. But I I've been saying this for a long time about Pokemon. You can keep cartoony looks, but that's no excuse for your game to look like it came out in 2010.
So this Charmander to me looks like the charcoal. I don't know. I don't know how it's really called, but the charcoal looking Charmander. Um, from the one of the original Pokemon cards. You know where it's dark, the background's dark. He's more dark reddish than orange, and he's doing the fire blast. I look at that picture and I'm like, wow, it's this. So he's saying that essentially, where I'm keeping that same image from a long time ago. But personally, I don't see what the problem is with that. One of the games I played for a long time was Team Fortress 2, which is like the iconic cartoony game, right? Um, you hit someone and they fall apart into pieces or something like that. Um, the characters are just very like silly. They all have phrases that are like super. They're just jokes. They're weird. They're odd. They're funny. And everything. The maps are all cartoony, like far more cartoony than this. You have wood that doesn't even look like wood, right? You have brick that doesn't look like brick. You have guns that just don't look like they're shaped correctly, and they can do whatever they want. I think cartoony is actually very good, and as been shown in history, cartoony games scale well over the years. Like you could take Pokemon for example, whereas realistic games don't scale well. Um, it's one of the things people don't like about Dota actually is that some of the models are old and they weren't realistic, right? Like everyone makes fun of Morphling still, which is just water. He's just a wave form, so a like tsunami or something, like he's a wave, the form of a wave. People make fun of him because he looks too simple, but he is supposed to be cartoony, but he is not mega cartoony. Like some of the newer heroes they've released are cartoony, compared to old ones, right? Um, It's why, like, when you look at something like Viper, before the remodel, you're like, wow, it's literally just a like serpent, and it doesn't even look cool anymore. That's what people's argument was. In Dota 1, all the models were super cool and unique. Well, okay, maybe not unique because some like shared models, but they all looked distinctively different, but they didn't age super well. Like, I assume Spectre in Dota 1 just looks like a void of just nothing, and it's not. It didn't scale well over the years. Pokemon, on the other hand, I don't see the problem with being cartoony because that is something that keeps it going for its entire lifetime. I would think that is a plus because that means that it'll always look good. Um, I personally try to keep a balance between playing cartoony versus non-cartoony games because that's just my thing. I don't know. Some games look good cartoony. For example, I don't like the way that bodies are shaped in Fortnite. Some people do. I think it looks kind of odd. It makes the hitboxes weird. But you take a game like PUBG, over the years, like they have created that player look, right? Because you go back to the older battle royale games where they were hyper realistic, but they didn't age very well. They look kind of trashy. The environments look old. You know, the dust particles, if they have any, are old. The ground just looks like a bad texture, right? The grass is just odd looking. It's all dead, but it's still alive. It's very odd. But you take the PUBG stuff, they've now kept buildings looking real. Certain animations don't look super realistic, but they're good enough that you would like the animation as you're playing. The guns and things are realistic. Um, but they still have to improve it every single year after year and make it look better because it's realistic. A game like this, you can keep the game looking like this forever, and that's what I think one of their goals is. They want to keep the Pokemon theme of, hey, you can look at this Pokemon now and look at it 20 years ago and it looks the same. So it doesn't matter which game you play, you're getting a similar experience in what it looks like. I know that's one of the main series issues that people have. I haven't played a lot of the like newer main series games, but they always complain how the graphics haven't increased. Things don't look better. Things maybe even look worse. If you take this more cartoony approach, that doesn't even happen. And that might be one of the things they're trying to make sure doesn't happen. People complaining about how the game looks. Maybe they just did this ultra cartoon look for that. Who really knows? Um, you can kind of see it in how when you kill, you make another Pokemon faint, right? It goes into its Pokeball or whatever. There's no body on the ground. There's nothing. It's super cartoony, and I think that's just to keep the game, looking like how Pokemon games always have been.
And I am thoroughly not impressed by the graphics I'm seeing in this trailer, even if they're trying to mimic other Dota games.
That's the issue, right? Like they can pump out like a simple Pokemon game every 2 or 3 years and make it cheap, and it'll still sell like gangbusters, right? It's
Right.
nuts. Like Pokemon Sword and Shield, not spectacular games out the gate. They're not bad now, but release garbage, and they still were the best-selling Pokemon games of all time. Like what the hell?
Hmm.
But I think the animations in this look cool. The upgrade paths, like you can start with a Charmander, you get to a certain level, Charmeleon, then Charizard. You unlock different moves. You can upgrade your items to then, I don't know if you can get.
So, like, my question would be, if you don't like Snorlax and how he is now, how do you change him to make him better? Do you make him more realistic with like hair and things? Do you make his slashes look very aggressive, his auto attacks? Do you make them look like moves almost every auto attack he does? Cuz right there you saw it was like some white slash, right?
Start with a Charmander, you get to a certain level,
It was
Charmeleon, then
Snorlax
Charizard
before, yeah.
of all time.
So
Like
this
what the hell?
Snorlax when he
Hmm.
attacks,
But I
is it
think the
before?
animations in this look
Like right
cool.
there. What do you do to make this Snorlax look better? I feel like it looks great right now. This slash right
But
here
I
looks
think the
fantastic.
animations in this look cool.
I thought that looked good. I don't see how you could make it better. And, a lot of people, I feel like, criticize, but, you know, what are you really gonna
The
do
upgrade
to a
paths,
game
like
like
you start with a
this
Charmander, you get to a
to
certain
make it
level
look better?
Charmeleon, then
All the
Charizard,
auto
you unlock
attacks look
different
great to me.
moves. You can
All the
upgrade
moves look great
items
to
to
me.
then, I don't know if you can get like choice bands or choice
They're
scarabs
very
or assault
descriptive
vests to
in
make you
what
more
they do
tanky.
based off of their
There's
visuals,
Mhm.
which
different
is something a
classes,
lot of
kind of like
games
in
don't have.
Overwatch, where you have like
Like it'll just
attackers,
be
you have
like you use a
defenders,
move and the other
or
person takes damage, and you
tanks.
don't know what really
Uh,
happened. You don't know how to
Different Pokemons
counterplay
within
it.
those
But all of these
subcategories.
moves, they show like what does it do?
Yeah, I think
Does the
the
guy come
animations look
in and
cool.
go out?
The
Does it
Pokemon
just go
designs, they're
in?
not crazy.
You
Like
can
the
see everything
the
that's going
levels,
on in this fight.
they're
Sure, it might be a
they're
little
basic,
flashy
right?
there
You
because
have
a lot
three
of people at
lanes. You got
once.
jungling in the
But
middle.
this is
How do you
also a
deviate from
low
that for
frame
standard
rate
MOBA? Uh, I
um,
think, like you said,
capture.
it looks
I don't know why they
dated.
did it so low
You got a
frame rate.
Pokemon skin on top of it.
It must have
It's
just
gonna
been a
sell because it's
problem
got
with
Pokemon in the
maybe it's
name.
the
But I
phones
think
have a
it's
lower
gonna be
frame rate. I don't
fun.
know,
Now here's something I would be
but
really
the game looks really good. I don't see, and I know on the Switch it kept the 59 frame rate the entire way through. I think there was only one part where there was like 6 Pokemon and half of them were using Unite moves at once, where the frame rate dropped or something. But the game itself looks good. The ground, what's wrong with the ground? It shows the lanes. It looks decent, and maybe that's what he's talking about with like, I don't understand it because I played Dota. I also played League a long time ago, and I've watched people play other MOBAs. Like I've seen Heroes of the Storm. I've played a couple hours, or I guess a few hours maybe, of Arena of Valor. I've looked at other MOBAs, and it looks fine. I don't see the problem with it. It looks good, or at least decent. You could say at least decent. Like it doesn't look bad to me. I don't get it.
interesting because I'm skimming through again. I've made it pretty obvious. I'm watching YouTube as we're talking here. I would be I would be willing to say that the moves, especially because, as I just said, I always wanted to see a game where the Pokemon attack and engage a bit more realistically to, if they existed, how it would probably go.
Right.
The attacks look okay. I would love to
Good.
find out, and I know they won't for balancing purposes, but these Pokemon could learn every attack that they could learn in the games.
I don't
Keep it to
know.
4.
I don't think
What?
that's gonna happen.
I think they can learn four, but I think at certain level points you have to actually swap out certain moves regardless of if you want to or not. Like if you have to learn like Fire Punch over Tackle, but you want to keep Tackle because that's like a good side bonus, well you have to get rid of it anyways.
Yeah, which is something I don't
Oh,
like
interesting.
personally.
Well,
but-
I didn't mean that they have to be able to learn like 100 moves in one match. I mean like all the moves that they're capable
Yeah.
of learning should be available as some form of like.
And I think that's something that could have happened, but who knows about like their production timeline, when they had to get the game out, all these things. Balancing that sounds like an absolute nightmare, because so many Pokemon learn different types of moves, and it would just mean so much customization to where I feel like a lot of Pokemon would start blending in with what they're supposed to do in the game, which I could easily see being a big problem, right? You want to have certain Pokemon that sit there, do damage. You want to have certain Pokemon that move around and do damage. You want to have certain ones that take damage. You want to have certain ones that move around and take damage. And if you give everybody all these moves, I feel like as you're playing, it would be so hard to understand what the other team is building. Like right now, you know that after, a certain point in the game, you know the 2 moves that each enemy Pokemon has. You've seen them, or at least you've probably seen them. So you know those 2 moves plus the Unite move. If something comes in and it, throws a curveball as you're playing mid game, then late game, you're so confused because these games are only 10 minutes long. And one of the things that happens in MOBAs is you forget that like you are not in last game. So you'll expect that the enemy team has something, but they don't. For example, if there's one hero that's really popular and they destroyed you last game, well, passively you're going to be thinking this game that they are really farmed because you're just thinking about last game. Unless you took a break or something, it's hard to get it out of your head. You're like, oh man, he has this item he's going to use. And you're like, oh wait, that was last game. It's so easy for that to happen. And if these are 10-minute games, that is going to happen nonstop. Especially with the, smaller hero pool or Pokemon pool. Sorry, I keep saying that. with the smaller Pokemon pool, you're going to be seeing the same Pokemon like over and over. It'll be hard to keep track of the moves that the enemy has this game with just the two upgrades they can pick for each move. So they can have, 5 moves, but in the game they'll have 3. And it's really important that you know what the enemy has each game to know how to play against it, to play around it, so that your team can do well. Think about like a Grey Ninja that picks the clone move versus the smoke screen. Like that's a very big different play. Um, and if he has more moves to pick from, you might forget which one he has because you're thinking, oh wow, instead of just the 2 out of 4 moves, now he's 2 out of 10. You might accidentally think about the wrong move, and I could see that being too complex and something that's just too annoying to have to play against. Or even like your own teammates, if you're just solo queuing, you might not know what moves they're going to pick because I don't think you can look at the other teammates. Plus, the queues go pretty fast, where once everyone's selected, the game kind of starts. So, what are you supposed to research your teammates' moves? One of the that's one of the flaws of the game is where the same Pokemon doesn't do the same thing every game, which is like a great plus. It's very fun. It makes it much more adaptive and it makes every game feel different. At least as long as people are picking different things, which I assume will happen forever. There might be like good builds, but people will always somewhat pick a different move somewhere. One of the hard things is if I'm laning with somebody, I don't know what moves they're upgrading to until they use the move. And then I have to think about was that their move 1 or move 2? They still have the other one to pick 3 levels later, or, however many levels it is for them, really. But I have to keep track of what move did they replace, so what 2 moves do they have now. Things like that make it pretty complex versus a normal MOBA where they do really have the same 4 moves or so every game, and that's all they're ever going to do. And sure, they might upgrade certain ones at different levels. Every level usually get the move upgrade point. In this game, it's more like you get a totally new move. So you don't know what they're going to do until they do it. It's somewhat like, you're trying to figure out is the enemy team going to pick like a blink dagger or not to use against us. You don't know until they use it. But if you're playing at a high level or you're just trying to play by yourself in a team environment, you have to be thinking about what can your team do. Hopefully the voice chat's good, so that'll help. You can talk about the game plan and stuff like that as the game's going. But realistically, it already is like a decent amount of things to consider as you're playing the game. A lot of people seem to think that the game is going to be super incredibly simple, and I don't really think that's the case. I think that this game is more complex the more you think about it, and a lot of people are spending time not thinking about the game, much more just kind of having fun before the game releases, which is fine. It's not bad. But like they're making their tier lists, their item tier list, their Pokemon tier lists. They're making, guides which are great. But those don't work well unless you really try to think of the game as a team environment where you're saying, okay, well, like this guide really works if I'm playing by myself. But if you're trying to play in a team, you can't just be like, I'm going to pick moves that allow me to move quickly so I can get out of danger. You might just want to pick one move that does that and a different move that does a lot of damage because someone else on your other team can control them. It's one of those things where it's hard to always pick the right build because it does matter what your team is. And I really think that is where the complexity in the game is going to come. And you'll see some crazy drafts where one is definitely better than the other, but you get the rock, paper, scissors, where depending on what the enemy team is, like one of them could really outclass the other. But then you still have skill involved, where even the worst team could probably overcome something. Because realistically, the moves they don't counter other Pokemon per se. It just might be the tempo of some sort of lineup that's different. That might counter a different lineup. But that's my thoughts kind of on complexity of the game for it.
For the game, it's like a customize your build, what
Yep.
moveset, like I would like to see that. And I've always been really whiny about the fact, like, again, I love Pokemon, don't get me wrong, guys, but now that I'm an adult, I'm willing to acknowledge there's some things that when you played a game on the Game Boy were limitations that could have eventually been dealt with. And one of those limitations is the fact that Pokemon can only know 4 moves.
That's
um,
a complaint to this
I,
day.
I think this is a great opportunity for them to find a way to have Pokemon know 10 moves and not just get amnesia as soon as it tries to learn how to tail whip someone.
And not the move amnesia.
Yeah, well, yeah, not the move amnesia. You're right, because yeah. I mean, overall, it looks fun. It doesn't look like a my thing. I still would like to see a more grand scale Pokemon game, and you know what? I would almost like to see a grittier Pokemon game. I know that that's not what they're going for here, but
I mean, dude,
I don't know.
picture a like a World of Warcraft-esque Pokemon game, like an MMO game with Pokemon.
People have talked about MMO Pokemon for ever since Pokemon came out, because people used to make browser games that somewhat simulated that, and there was Warcraft mods that did that. Um, those were always very fun. Obviously, the Pokemon Company has never really made one. I think that is, and I'm not criticizing the video for this at all. That, like, this is what they're getting at, but the company just obviously doesn't want to make one for whatever reason. Maybe because MMOs are usually subscription based. Who knows? Maybe they don't want to just have servers sitting out there forever. Who knows? Um, but I feel like people are trying to make this game, or they're trying to say, I didn't want this game, I wanted something else. And I don't know if that's the greatest thing to do, because Pokemon really does have a lot of types of spin off games. Like, there's a lot of different games. And I think if people supported these spin offs, they'd make more. And maybe they'd eventually get to that MOBA. But instead, all of the fans, or not all of them, maybe not even most of them, a decent amount of them, oops, like criticize them making a new game and just saying, well, I wanted this. And since they're all scattered in what they really want, you know, Nintendo just goes, okay, we're just going to keep doing whatever we want to do. Because there isn't some consensus of, like, yeah, everybody wants this. So it's not like they have good feedback on it. It's always just, we didn't want this game. We wanted something else. And that probably doesn't feel the greatest. And they just keep sticking to their own story.
It'd be fun.
Yeah, it'd be awesome. And
Oh,
I
good.
agree with the same sentiment as you. We're older, we can be more realistic and more critical. The things that were done on like a Game Boy Color could be excused because of the time, but we're in 2021. Technology's advanced so much; they should be able to make the games look beautiful and excellent. And
I don't understand. What is bad about what's going on here? Like, is this. So keep in mind, this is not HD. Even if I put it on HD, I don't think they are displaying in HD. So this is not like an accurate representation. It doesn't look like this on my monitor. I'll say that.
able to make the games look beautiful and
So, like, I don't know. He dashed, and there's a fire move going off,
excellent
right?
and fluid and blah blah blah.
But I will
And there's a
say,
wall and a
at the end of the
confusion. You can
day,
see
I mean,
everything that's going on.
when I
You can
heard
see the auto
Pokemon being
attacks.
announced as a Dota, there
There's
was
the
not an
water
ounce
gun
of
thing.
shock. It
He's
it
doing his
makes
clone
sense for the
jutsu.
Pokemon
I keep forgetting what
universe.
it's
I
called.
think if they're not
But
going
you
to
can
tread
see
a new
everything that's
path, if
going
they're
on.
not going to
I
make
don't see the
their
problem.
own way, a Dota makes sense. It fits in the Pokemon world. It makes sense. Even looking at this arena, I'm looking at the map they're showing right now. It's shaped in a Pokeball. It makes sense. Like, it really does, right? You could see in a Pokemon world a bunch of fans coming and watching this in a Pokemon tournament.
Yep.
It makes sense, and I'll give them credit that they chose something that it makes sense to evolve into. I don't know. I mean, we've had these talks during movie trailers before where it's like, I don't want to say I'm disappointed because I don't want to be that whiny YouTuber who does nothing but complain, but I just don't get hooked looking at it. Just like I don't get hooked when I look at Dotas. And I play over the, top view games looking down. I play those kind of games. Just not League of Legends and stuff. And maybe that's not why this is not for me, but every time I watch games like League of Legends, I think they could look nicer. I think they could play in a way that looks less frenetic so that people watching it can tell what's going on. And I know people who play the games, it's not actually that frenetic. But I think if the Pokemon company wants to go down the path of Dota's, they could have at least taken the, hey, we're a multi-billion-dollar company.
Yep.
We take a step forward with these games instead of just mimicking what already exists.
And that's just that could be their time to like introduce their own flair or flavor aside from just the Pokemon paint. Like, oh, we do this thing, or we can introduce megas, or blah blah blah. Like,
Right.
there's so many cool avenues. Like they could have like the moves, like you were saying, where you have like different maybe TMs that you can unlock to teach them unique moves, or have a different palette of like potentials, or I don't know. You find a Z crystal in the middle of the map, and that's something you guys can like as like a side goal, or I don't know.
I mean, that's a true. That's a good. That's a good criticism. It didn't change because if you think about it, the jungle camps they have the blue and the red buff, which is basically stolen from League. Um, they have the Zapdos thing, which is a every MOBA thing. Essentially, it's not the same, obviously, but it is a bit different. I think the hoop theory of like these are hoops instead of towers is a fundamental change that nobody seems to care about. It really changes the dynamic of the game, how you should play the game. I don't know why it doesn't get much more credit. The way what this allows you to do is so significant. You can dive hoops because they're not towers. You can dive hoops because there's no creeps. You can farm when you're behind because you basically have your whole side of the game here. Obviously, they can come in here and not get slowed and whatnot, and they can come in your jungle, but you can probably farm safer here than any other game. I feel like it is different enough that they made tweaks to it. They took the same like model because like what are you going to do? He said put TMs in like random spots. I don't like that. That feels like Dota 2 item drops from jungle camps, which are like totally RNG and you don't know like the other team could have just gotten better items. Like that doesn't feel very good. Um And I assume his TM implementation would have worked something like that, where it's like you kill something and you get a TM, maybe. I don't know. But if it's just lying somewhere on the ground, that sounds like, whoa.
There's a lot of different things they could do to make this even better, or better than just a pass. But people who are fans of Pokemon be like, yes, because it's finally a different thing in their thing. It's different
Yeah.
for Pokemon.
I guess I'll just end it in this. No one from the Pokemon company is ever going to listen to this, but this goes to all big game companies. If you're going to straight up rip from smaller companies that even, they have one big game that's lasted a few years and that started off as nothing, at the very least you could do is one up them. Don't stoop to their level.
I feel like I'm missing what he's comparing this game to a lot. So they took Arena of Valor, which the studio made, and they said put a Pokemon tint on it. This game is still very different from that first, or like, not first, but this is still very different from Arena of Valor. Very different. So I just really think people aren't giving the game enough credit, or I guess the developers enough credit for taking a good model. A MOBA is a good model, and they changed a lot of things to it. I think that there is a lot of difference, and I'm totally missing the took something from a smaller indie company. I don't know what he's getting at with that. Um, because MOBAs like aren't really made by indie companies. They're made by big people because you need a ton of people to play them. The indie companies that make MOBAs don't get anywhere because they actually don't have a player base. And that's kind of been seen time and time again. So I don't know like what's really being ripped off, I guess.
level and their limitations. There's a reason why a lot of these games don't look as good as they could, and there's a
Exactly.
reason why a lot of these games depended on microtransactions and stuff to exist.
Besides greed.
You can, yeah, besides greed, um, you could do better, you could be better. Pokemon Company, honestly, at this point, I don't expect better of you. You're not the best example.
Nope.
Um,
Really.
but I expect better of a multi-billion-dollar company in terms of graphics, in terms of gameplay, from what I'm seeing. Um, and I would have expected more creativity. This could have been watching any of the Dotas, and it would have been not shocking if it was just kind of an expansion pack for them.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Unique
so
skins for
different.
Dota or League of Legends or whatever.
Yeah,
It's the
that's all I
game
got,
is
guys.
so
It's good
different.
talking to everyone. Y'all have a great evening.
Later, guys.
I don't know. I feel like this game, like look at this. This guy is scoring hoops while his teammates are maybe blocking off the enemy team from stopping him from scoring hoops. Like that just it's and he's a Snorlax. He's one guy. I don't think other games you can ever see that happening. I really don't. And part of it is that there's no items, there's no gold. It's just EXP, which you can scale yourself at. You get items that you bring into the game, but you don't buy items throughout the game. It really does feel so different to me that I don't understand a lot of the criticisms that the game is getting for not being different. I'm not sure why